Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're going to be jumping into a pretty fascinating story from the Bible.
Oh, yeah.
In Samuel chapter 7.
Awesome.
And this story, it's about King David wanting to build a temple for God.
Right.
But, well, there's kind of an unexpected turn of events.
Yeah.
And it reveals some really deep truths about, like God's relationship with humanity and what that means for us even today. So what do you think is so interesting about this whole story?
Well, it's interesting. It kind of challenges what we think we know,
Uh-huh.
right? Like we usually think about devotion as I don't know, grand gestures,
Oh, for sure.
big offerings. But this story shows us it might be something totally different.
Totally. Okay, so like setting the scene.
Okay.
We've got King David, right? He's
Mhm.
finally settled in his palace. He's comfy. And then it hits him.
Yeah.
The Ark of the Covenant, that super sacred symbol of God's presence, is still just hanging out in a tent. So naturally, he's like, I got to build a magnificent temple for God.
Right.
Seems like a pretty good idea.
Yeah, on the surface, totally. I mean, he wants to honor God, right? Wants to do something big, but
Yeah.
there's a twist. God talks to David through the prophet Nathan.
Ooh, I love a good plot twist. Okay, so what does God say?
Well, basically, David, I haven't needed a fancy house since I led the Israelites out of Egypt.
Mhm.
I'm not stuck in one place. It matters is our connection, you and me.
Whoa,
Yeah.
that's pretty deep. Like, we don't need to build some giant building to please God.
Exactly. Faith, it's not about all that stuff. It's much more personal.
Right.
Way more relational. But then God makes David a huge promise.
Okay, I'm listening. What's the promise?
God's going to build David a house.
A house.
Yeah. Not a real one, a dynasty. His family line, it's going to continue on and on.
Wow.
His kingdom, it's going to last. His kids, their kids are all going to rule after him.
Wow.
And this promise, it's called the Davidic covenant. And guess what? It points to, well,
What?
Jesus. No way.
Yeah, the Messiah. He came from David's line.
So this whole thing, it started with a temple, but it's got this huge historical and theological meaning. That's pretty wild.
It really is.
So, okay, what about David? How do you react to all this?
You'd think, right? He'd be bummed, maybe even a little insulted that God said no to his temple.
Right.
But David, he actually does something amazing. He prays. He thanks God, acknowledges how great God is, and just accepts it.
Huh. Powerful. It's like letting go of our ego.
Cool.
Like realizing sometimes our plans, they don't line up with God's big picture.
Right. And sometimes, the biggest act of faith is
Yeah.
just being humble, accepting things as they are.
Yeah. Okay, but this is all ancient history, right? Like, how does any of this apply to our lives? We're not kings building temples or getting prophecies.
True. We're in a totally different time.
Right.
But I think those ideas, they still matter today. Like David letting go of his big plan, we have to learn to do that too.
Let go of our timelines. Trust that God's timing is better, even if we don't get it.
It's hard though, right? Letting go, like we're so used to being in control. It's like surrendering to something bigger.
Yeah, it is. And it's hard.
Totally.
It is. But I mean, think about it. If David, the king, with all his power, had to surrender his plan,
Right.
surely we can too, right?
Right.
I mean, we might not be building actual temples,
Right.
but we all have things we're trying to build, careers, families,
Oh, yeah.
big projects we're passionate about.
Totally. Our own like metaphorical temples.
Exactly.
But how do we know when to keep pushing and when to like let go and trust a different timeline? What if we're just being stubborn and we think it's like God's timing or whatever?
That's a great question. It's about, knowing yourself and being honest.
Yeah.
Like if you keep hitting a wall,
Yeah.
maybe it's time to try a different door.
I like that. Okay, but how do we figure out what God wants? Like we don't get prophets showing up at our door anymore.
No, we don't. Not usually, anyway. But that doesn't mean we're on our own.
Right.
David's story, it shows us how important it is to pray, think things through, pay attention.
Pay attention to what?
Those little nudges, the things that happen in our lives.
Like a gut feeling.
Kinda, yeah. It's about creating space for stillness, reflection, even if we're super busy, and trusting that the answers, they'll come when they come.
So we have to be like open,
Oh,
receptive.
Exactly.
Okay, so going back to that other big thing from the story, God's promise to David, to build him that dynasty,
Right.
to make his family line last. I feel like there's something there, something about legacy. but not like statues and kingdoms.
That's a great point. It's about how our lives affect other people,
Mm,
like a ripple effect. David's legacy, it went way beyond him, right? Through his kids and that Davidic covenant thing.
right, right.
And our actions, well, they can do that too. They can last, they can shape the future, even if we don't see it.
So maybe our house, it's about creating something that outlives us,
Mm.
like a family with strong values,
Mm-hmm.
or a community we help
Yeah.
build, or even just, being kind to people, just small things.
Exactly. It's about understanding that our lives are connected. Every choice we make, every little thing we do, it all matters.
Yeah.
It all adds up. Even a tiny act of kindness, it can change things way beyond what we can imagine.
So we all have the power to make a difference.
We do.
Doesn't have to be some big, huge thing.
Nope. It takes the pressure off, you know?
Yeah.
We don't have to be perfect. It's just about choosing love, choosing kindness, doing the right thing.
That makes a lot of sense.
Mhm.
Okay, so last question. If God promised to build you a house,
Mm-hmm.
what kind of house would you want? What would be important to you?
That is a deep question.
It is.
Well, I think for me, I'd want a house that was like warm, a welcoming place
Yeah.
where everyone felt accepted,
Yeah.
no matter who they are, what they believe. I think that'd be amazing.
I love that. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
For me, I think a place where people could be creative,
Yeah.
where they could learn and grow and just like ask questions, explore. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, I like that. Makes you think, what about our listeners? What kind of house do they want to build? What kind of legacy are they hoping for?
It is something to think about, isn't it?
Yeah.
As we come to the end of our deep dive,
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to hear what you all think. What really stood out to you from this story?
Yeah.
Like if you could build your own house based on faith and all that, what would it look like?
Oh, we talked about trusting God's timing, even when it's tough, and about being grateful, humble, seeking guidance when life gets messy.
Yeah. And that idea of legacy, it's not just about us, it's bigger. It's about how we impact the world.
David's story, it might be old, but it's still so wise.
Yeah.
Real devotion. It's not about showing off or giving stuff away. It's what happens inside us when we let go of our ego. Embrace humility. Connect with something bigger.
It's about realizing we're all builders, creating our own special house through the choices we make, the people we care about, and how we contribute to the world.
Exactly. So as we wrap up, think about the house you're building. What's the foundation? What do you want people to remember about you?
It doesn't have to be perfect or huge. Just make choices that feel right and try to, leave things a little better than you found them.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. It's been great exploring this with you.
We hope you keep building your house with bravery, kindness, and purpose. And until next time, keep diving deep.